Welcome back to the channel, boys. Today we're going to look at arguably one of Toyota's best engines ever, even better than the 2JZ. Just kidding on that last part, but we are going to take a look at the Toyota 2GR. We're going to talk about what makes it so special, so interesting, how it's so reliable, what it can do with the help of some aftermarket parts, and a whole lot more. So stay tuned. Toyota first introduced the GR family in 2005, and it was designed to replace the outdated MZ, VZ, and even JZ engine families. Toyota offers a wide range of different vehicles, obviously, so they need a few different engine sizes for those applications. For their larger sedans and smaller SUVs, they needed something with more power and more torque than what a smaller four-cylinder could deliver, and that's where they turned to the 2GR. The 2GR is effectively a modified version of the 1GR that you'll find in Toyota's larger SUVs like the 4Runner and FJ Cruiser. The 2GR compared to the 1GR, they're very similar, but the biggest difference is going to be the decreased stroke from 95mm down to 83mm. This takes the displacement from 4 liters in the 1GR down to 3.5 liters in the 2GR. Now that you know where the 2GR came from and why Toyota made it and what it replaced, let's take a closer look at some of the basic specs and the variants that it came in. The entire 2GR engine family uses an open deck V6 design with an aluminum cylinder block and aluminum cylinder heads. It features a bore and stroke of 94mm by 82mm, bringing total displacement up to 3.5 liters like I mentioned before. If you're not familiar with different types of engine material, Toyota specifically used an aluminum block and heads to save weight and also improve thermal efficiency, but that also comes at a higher production cost. For this video, we're going to be looking at all 5 versions of the 2GR, which include the 2GR FE, the 2GR FSE, the 2GR FXE, the 2GR FKS, and the 2GR FXS. Across all of these engines, you'll find dual VVTi, which is Toyota's variable valve timing system. But it is worth noting that one of these variants uses dual VVTi-W, but we'll cover that a little bit later in the video. Another thing that you'll find on every 2GR variant is Toyota's ACIS system, which stands for Acoustic Control Induction System, which is a bulkhead to divide the intake manifold into 2 stages and an intake air control valve in the bulkhead, which opens and closes to change the effective length of the intake manifold runners according to engine speed and throttle valve opening angle. To put that really simply, that ACIS system is really just a basic system to change the intake manifold runner length. And what this does is it changes intake air velocity depending on RPM. Depending on what you're going for, different runner lengths will perform better or worse at specific RPMs and loads. Across the 2GR engine family, we're looking at a production run from 2005 onwards, and it's still being used today. Aluminum block and aluminum cylinder heads, dual overhead cams, 4 valves per cylinder, and dual VVTi on every engine, a stroke of 83mm and a bore of 94mm, a compression ratio of 10.8 to 1 all the way up to 13 to 1 depending on the application, horsepower ranging from 268 all the way up to 430, and torque ranging from 248 pound-feet all the way up to 325 pound-feet. So now that you kind of have a basic idea of what the 2GR is about and some of those basic specifications, let's take a look at the list of applications that use this engine. And fair warning, it's a very, very long list. So for the 2GR FE, which is the first engine in this family, we're looking at the Toyota Avalon, Arion, RAV4, Vanguard, Estima, Previa, Tarago, Camry, Highlander, Kluger, Blademaster, Mark X Zeo, Alfred, Velfire, Venza, Sienna, the Lexus LM350, ES350, and RX350, the Lotus Evora, Bolwell Nagari 300, the Super GT Toyota Corolla, and the Lotus Evora GTE. The supercharged versions of the FE engine include the TRD Arion, the Bolwell Nagari 300, the Lotus Evora S and Evora 400, Lotus Exige S, and Lotus Emira. For the 2GR FSE, we're looking at the Toyota Crown Athlete, Crown Hybrid, and Mark X, the Lexus GS350, GS450H, IS300, and RC350. For the 2GR FXE, we're looking at the Toyota Highlander Hybrid and Crown Majesta, and the Lexus RX450H and GS450H. For the FKS variant, we have the Toyota Tacoma, Highlander, Sienna, Camry, Alfred, Avalon, the Lexus GS350, RX350, LS350, IS350, ES350, RC350, and LM350. And then for the FXS variant, we have the Lexus RX450H and the Toyota Highlander. Like I said, that's a pretty ridiculous list of applications. And that engine is still being used today. It came in a whole bunch of different forms for a whole bunch of different vehicles ranging from small to big. Really, it's a super versatile engine and provided great performance for every single application. Of all those applications that I just listed, you'll probably find the Lotus applications the most interesting. For a handful of reasons, Lotus decided to use the 2GR engine. 1, it provides good performance. 2, it's a lot cheaper than developing your own V6 engine. It's going to provide a better torque curve and better throttle response than a smaller turbocharged engine at the same power output. And it's also a decently small V6 engine physically, so it fits into Lotus's chassis very well. Now you can also find it in the Bolwell Nagari, which is an Australian supercar type of thing I've personally never heard of, but I think it's really cool that you can also find that engine in that kind of a performance car as well. As I mentioned earlier, there are 5 different versions of this engine. So let's quickly take a look at each variant and what makes each one different and which one is the best. Starting with the most basic version, we have the 2GR FE, which is basically ground zero for the 2GR. It was really the first and most basic, and every single variant after that builds upon that variant. Key features for the 2GR FE include an open deck design, aluminum construction, dual VVTi, the ACIS induction system that I had mentioned earlier, and an L-type sequential fuel injection system, which is basically just port injection. Moving to the FSE version, the biggest change is the addition of Toyota's D4S twin fuel injection system. This works by using both port injection and direct injection for the best of both worlds. Moving to the FXE, the big change is the addition of the Atkinson cycle operation of the engine, which is simply just a solution for improving the compression to expansion ratio. This works by effectively reducing the stroke on the compression cycle by holding the intake valve open through part of the compression cycle. To put that really simply, the Atkinson cycle is basically just there to improve thermal and fuel efficiency. It's also worth noting that the FXE version has port injection or the D4S injection system depending on the variant. So really there's 2 variants of the FXE version itself. The last feature that you'll find on the FXE is that it has a cooled EGR system that the FE does not. Next is the FKS variant, which is really just an evolution of the FSE variant. The big change is the addition of the VVTi-W system added to the intake camshaft, which gives the FKS version a wider camshaft timing range compared to the 2GR engines with the standard VVTi system. It also features the D4S injection system, and it was the first Toyota engine ever to combine both D4S and VVTi-W. Last but certainly not least, we have the FXS version, which is basically just the FKS version that we already went over, but with the addition of a hybrid drivetrain. You'll find this in obviously Toyota and Lexus hybrid vehicles. To put all those changes really simply, Toyota basically just improved the engine from one variant to another, with the FE basically being ground zero, the most basic version of this engine. And with every new version, there was changes to the cylinder head and injection system that made it more thermally efficient and more fuel efficient. Now, in terms of tuning potential, the 2GR does have a leg up compared to other Toyota engines because of the fact that it was used in Lotus applications, which opened up a whole new world of aftermarket performance that you wouldn't normally see on a Toyota V6 engine. After some digging around, it looks like the most you can really get out of a 2GR engine is about 300 to 300 wheel horsepower for an NA street car, but it is worth noting that there are some builds out there that are pushing over 400 horsepower NA at the crank. Interestingly enough, the 2GR is actually a pretty popular swap for the Toyota MR2. This is because of the same reasons that Lotus uses the 2GR. It's compact enough to fit, it has decent power, low weight, better throttle response than a similarly powered small turbocharged engine, and it fits into the chassis well. In terms of turbocharged builds, there are plenty of examples of builds pushing well over 600 horsepower, with some examples floating around online pushing over 800 horsepower. Obviously, superchargers are a pretty popular thing for the 2GR, especially the FE version, and this is mostly because Toyota started this trend themselves with their TRD superchargers. Nowadays, getting a TRD supercharger for your 2GR engine is pretty difficult because there's not that many laying around, finding them is hard, and then oftentimes they're going to need maintenance because it's an old supercharger setup. But there are companies such as Magnuson who are supporting the 2GR, especially the version that you find in the new Toyota Tacoma. They're offering full supercharger systems that have everything that you need all the way down from the fuel injection, the supercharger itself, the tuning, the vacuum system, literally everything is there. And it's super easy. You slap it together on your 2GR and you make a bunch of power. To wrap this up, I know we did cover a lot, but it's easiest to remember that the 2GR is a 3.5 liter Toyota V6. It's an all aluminum design, open deck, dual overhead cam, dual VVTi, and it offers a decent amount of performance for its size and weight. In fact, it's such a good performer that Lotus and Bolwell even started using it in some of their supercars. Now, in some of the more basic versions, you're only looking at like 268 horsepower, which isn't very much, but when you look at some of the better performing versions, we're talking about 300 to 320 horsepower, even more with some modifications, and that's actually pretty good considering it's only a 3.5 liter engine and it's naturally aspirated. If you were to look at something like a 3.3 liter Kia turbocharged engine, which has 2 turbos, not even 1, but 2, it barely produces any more power than that, although it produces significantly more torque. That's a little bit off topic, but the point is that the 2GR performs really, really well given its size. So that's pretty much all I have for you guys today. If you enjoyed the video, please smash the thumbs up button, get subscribed so you don't miss out on future videos. Check out all the other videos on the channel. We have a ton of videos covering engines and builds and a whole bunch of cool little things. Drop a comment down below if you think I missed anything or if there's anything you want to add, and I'll see you guys in the next video.